I thought my boss's wife was cheating on him with her eyes, but what I found out later almost ruined my life. That's how this whole story begins. And baby, let me tell you, I wish it was as simple as some scandal about infidelity. But no, what I stumbled into was way bigger, way scarier, and honestly, I'm still not sure I've made peace with it. I work as an executive assistant. The job ain't glamorous, but it pays the bills, and I was proud of the fact that I was good at it. My boss, Mr. Carter, was one of those men everybody looked up to. Sharp suit, perfect smile, commanding presence. He had the kind of reputation that made people nod their heads respectfully when his name came up in conversation. You know the type. Untouchable. And then there was his wife, Vanessa. Now listen. Vanessa looked like she had just stepped out of one of those glossy magazines. Perfect hair, perfect skin, voice smooth like honey. The kind of woman who doesn't just walk into a room, she claims it. Everybody turned their heads when she passed by. And me? I tried to stay out of her way. She wasn't mean or anything, not outright. But there was something about the way her eyes lingered when they landed on me, like she was seeing more than she let on. At first I brushed it off. Maybe she was just one of those people who made long eye contact, you know? But the more time I spent around her, the harder it was to ignore. She always seemed too attentive. Like when I'd be at the office late and she'd swing by to pick up her husband, she'd always find a reason to stop by my desk, compliment my hair, ask about my weekend, smile in this way that felt intimate, too intimate. And Lord, I ain't naive. I grew up around women who knew how to read a room. My aunties always told me, if somebody's watching you too closely, baby, they want something. So the thought slipped into my head. What if Vanessa wanted me? What if she was stepping out on her husband and I was the target? I hated myself for even entertaining it, but the clues kept adding up. Like that night at the company gala. She wore this red dress that made the whole room stop breathing. I swear, every man in that ballroom wanted her attention. But her eyes, they weren't on them. They were on me, sharp, steady, like she was daring me to look away. And I swear I caught the faintest smirk on her lips, like she knew exactly what she was doing. After that, I couldn't unsee it. Every glance, every little comment, every brush of her hand when she got too close. It all felt deliberate, and I started to get nervous, because if I was right, then this wasn't just any woman. It was my boss's wife. The stakes weren't just high, they were deadly high. One wrong move, and my whole career could go up in flames. I told myself I was imagining it, that she was just being friendly, that maybe I was reading too much into it because, well, she was stunning and mysterious and the kind of woman you don't forget easily. But deep down, I knew better. The way she looked at me wasn't just friendly. It was layered, heavy, charged. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something else behind her gaze, like she was testing me, measuring me. As if I was a puzzle piece, she was trying to see if she could fit into her picture. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about attraction. Vanessa was hiding something big. I didn't know what yet, but I felt it in my bones. And that was the night I made the mistake of letting curiosity creep in. Because once you start paying attention to a woman like Vanessa, there's no turning back. And trust me when I say, what I was about to find out would drag me into a world I never asked to be part of. The first time I knew something was off, it was a Thursday night. I stayed late at the office like I usually did, and Vanessa showed up to pick up Mr. Carter. She was all smiles like always, but her phone kept buzzing in her purse. I swear I could hear it even from across the room. She glanced at the screen. Her face changed just a little, tight, almost guilty, and she slipped the phone back before her husband saw. But I caught it. I always catch things like that. From that night on, I couldn't stop paying attention. And Lord, the things I started to notice, it was like a curtain had been pulled back. I'd see her texting furiously in the lobby while she waited for him, Sometimes she'd leave the building before he came down, saying she had errands. Other times she'd show up later, claiming traffic, hair appointments, anything to explain why she wasn't with him. But those excuses? They didn't sound real. They sounded rehearsed. One evening, after another long day, I walked to my car and spotted Vanessa across the street. She was dressed too casual for her usual self. Jeans, a hoodie pulled low, big sunglasses even though the sun had set. She wasn't alone. There was a man leaning close, whispering something to her. They weren't touching, but the way they angled their bodies, the way she laughed, soft and secret. My heart dropped. I thought, oh Lord, she's cheating. She's really doing it. I sat in my car, frozen, watching them. Every bone in my body screamed to look away, but I couldn't. It was like watching a movie play out in front of me, except this one had the power to wreck my entire world. If Vanessa was really stepping out on Mr. Carter, and I knew about it, that meant I was holding dynamite without even asking for it. From that moment, everything she did felt suspicious. The late-night calls she claimed were from friends. The way she'd slip away from charity events and come back looking different. I even started catching whiffs of unfamiliar cologne on her clothes when she hugged me hello. Every little detail felt like another piece of the puzzle, and all the pieces screamed, affair. Now let me be clear, I didn't want to be involved. This wasn't my business. I wasn't about to play detective on somebody else's marriage. But Vanessa wouldn't let me ignore it. She kept pulling me closer, intentionally or not. She'd leave her phone on the table, screen lighting up with messages she didn't want Mr. Carter to see. She'd slip comments into conversations, vague little hints like, sometimes we all need distractions. And then she'd look at me, her eyes too sharp, too knowing. I was drowning in suspicion. I felt like every room I entered, every hallway I walked down, I was carrying this secret weight. And the craziest part? I wasn't even sure it was mine to carry. But I knew one thing. If Vanessa really was having an affair, it was only a matter of time before someone else found out. And if her husband was the one to find out first, well, people like Mr. Carter didn't get embarrassed. They got even. One night, I made the mistake of looking at her reflection in a mirror at a dinner party. She wasn't watching her husband. She wasn't watching the crowd. She was watching me. And in her eyes, I saw something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't love. It wasn't desire. It was more like calculation. Like she was deciding what role I was going to play in her secret story. That S when it hit me, this wasn't just a random affair I had stumbled onto. No. This was something deliberate. Something I was being dragged into whether I wanted it or not. And my gut told me clear as day, I was already in too deep. Chilly, let me tell you, when I got that message from her, I swear my heart skipped a beat. It was a Tuesday afternoon, nothing special about it. I was still at my desk, finishing up reports when my phone buzzed. And there it was. Do you have time for a coffee tomorrow? Just you and me. I need to talk. Signed, of course, by her, my boss's wife. I remember staring at that text like it was a trap door opening right beneath my feet. Why would she want to meet me? Alone? Over coffee? The first thought that popped into my head was that maybe she wanted to confront me, maybe she thought I was after her husband, or maybe she had figured out that I noticed those secretive messages she had been sending. Either way, it didn't sit right. That night I barely slept, tossed and turned, running through every scenario. Was she about to confess an affair? Did she think I knew too much? And most of all, why me? Out of everybody she could trust, why the assistant? I woke up with my stomach twisted in knots, but there was no way I was backing out. I had to see what this was all about. The next day, I put on my favorite blazer. You know, that one that makes you feel like you can handle anything. And I walked into that little corner cafe she chose. It was one of those cozy spots with jazz playing low and the smell of fresh croissants hanging in the air. And there she was, already sitting at a table in the back, sunglasses on, like some kind of movie star hiding from the paparazzi. When she saw me, she smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that makes you feel warm. No, baby. It was the kind that makes you feel like you about to sign a contract you never even read. She leaned in as soon as I sat down. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. Her tone was low, almost secretive. She kept looking around like somebody might be watching us, and then she dropped the first line that made my skin crawl. "I don't know who else I can trust right now." "Excuse me? What?" I didn't even know we were supposed to be in a trust circle together. But I nodded, trying to play it cool, sipping my latte while my heart was doing jumping jacks in my chest. She started talking in circles at first, saying how her marriage wasn't what it looked like, how appearances could be deceiving, how people in this city wore masks thicker than makeup. I just kept nodding because honestly, I didn't want to say the wrong thing. And then she leaned even closer, so close I could smell her perfume. Sharp, expensive, intoxicating. And she said, "You've seen things, haven't you? You've noticed." Now tell me how I was supposed to answer that? Of course I'd noticed. I'd noticed the late night calls, the mysterious absences, the texts that didn't make sense. But the way she asked it wasn't like she was worried about being caught cheating. No, it felt like she was testing me, like she wanted to see if I was paying attention to something deeper. I tried to play dumb. I shrugged. "I mean, I've seen you around the office a few times. I don't know much beyond that." She smiled again, slow this time, like she could see straight through me. "Good," she said, "because I need someone who can keep quiet, but also someone smart enough to connect the dots." Lord, when I tell you that my coffee turned sour in my mouth after she said that, I'm not exaggerating. This woman wasn't just gossiping. She wasn't just venting about her husband. She was pulling me into something. I felt it. The whole cafe suddenly felt like it had eyes and ears, like every person in there was a witness waiting to report back. She touched my hand across the table, nails perfectly done, grip cold and steady. "You can't tell anyone we met. Not him, not your coworkers, nobody. If you do, things could get dangerous." "Dangerous? Excuse me, ma'am, I am not built for danger. I came here for gossip, maybe a confession, not a whole episode of scandal." But there she was, staring at me with those big brown eyes, waiting for me to agree. And the crazy thing, I did. I nodded, because I didn't know what else to do. Something in her voice, the way she said it, made me feel like if I walked away, I'd regret it forever. Like this was bigger than me, bigger than my boss, bigger than an affair. By the time I left that cafe, my head was spinning. I told myself it was nothing, that she was just being dramatic. But deep down, I knew better. I knew she had just opened a door for me, and stepping through it meant there was no turning back. And baby, let me tell you, that was the moment I realized this wasn't just about who was sleeping with who. This was about power. And she had just handed me the first piece of a puzzle I wasn't keel ready to solve. Girl, let me tell you how my whole world turned upside down that afternoon. I swear, I was just minding my business, trying to get through another long day at the office, when curiosity pulled me into something I wasn't ready for. You know that little voice in your head that tells you, don't do it? Well, I didn't listen. And because I didn't, I found out something about my boss's wife that I'll never forget. See, after that strange coffee meeting with her, I couldn't shake this feeling. The way she leaned in, whispering that she couldn't trust anybody but me, it stayed on my mind like a song stuck on repeat. I knew something wasn't right, but I thought maybe she was just being dramatic. Lord, I had no idea, so here's what happened. One evening, I was helping her out. She had dropped her scarf in the back seat of my car after our coffee, so I went by her place to return it. Simple, right? But when she invited me inside, just for a minute, that's when things took a turn. She left her purse on the couch while she went to the kitchen, and I swear to you it was like the bag was calling my name. I don't even snoop like that, but something in me said, look inside. So I did. I thought maybe I'd see a lipstick, maybe a love letter, maybe even a hotel key card, something to confirm the affair I was so sure she was having. But instead, my heart nearly stopped. There were folders, thick ones, and inside them, lists of names, account numbers, transactions scribbled down with dates. Not just random notes either. I saw company letterheads, bank seals, copies of wire transfers. My hands started shaking because this wasn't about another man. This was about money, serious money. I shoved the papers back fast when I heard her footsteps. My pulse was racing, my throat dry like cotton. She came back smiling like nothing was wrong, carrying 2 glasses of wine, and all I could do was force a smile back. I couldn't even taste that wine, girl. My mind was screaming. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, asking myself why the hell she would be carrying all that in her purse. Who keeps financial documents that heavy on them? It wasn't normal. And that's when I realized I had been looking in the wrong direction this whole time. She wasn't cheating on her husband. She was hiding something way deeper. The next few days at work were torture. Every time my boss's wife showed up, all I could think about were those folders. I started noticing how she moved, how careful she was with her phone, how her eyes darted around when people got too close. It was like she was living in 2 worlds, the perfect wife on the outside and something darker underneath. I remember one moment clear as day. She came by the office, gave her husband this sweet little kiss on the cheek, smiled at everyone like she was hosting a dinner party, and then her eyes cut to me, sharp, knowing, like she could tell I had seen something I wasn't supposed to. I felt my stomach drop. Did she know I looked in her bag? Could she read it on my face? Because I swear, in that second, it felt like we were the only 2 people in the room. That night she called me. I'll never forget her voice. It was calm, almost too calm. "We need to talk," she said. And the way she said it, my skin broke out in goosebumps. She didn't even ask. She demanded, like she had already decided I was part of this mess. And girl, that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about betrayal in the bedroom. This wasn't even about her husband at all. This was bigger, way bigger. So when I finally met her again, I looked at her differently. She wasn't just a beautiful woman married to a powerful man. She was dangerous. She was hiding an empire made of secrets, and I had stumbled right into it. And let me tell you, when I pieced it together, when I realized this was about money, power, and things I couldn't even begin to understand, I knew I had a choice. Walk away or get caught in the storm she was brewing. But you already know me. I didn't walk away. And that is when I understood something that still chills me to this day. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was building something, quietly, carefully, ruthlessly. And somehow, I was now a part of it. And girl, that was the moment I realized she wasn't just hiding a lover. She was hiding an empire. Chilly, let me tell you. After what I saw in that woman's bag, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was knee-deep in something I had no business being part of. You ever had one of those nights where your soul just won't sit still? That was me, tossing and turning, whispering prayers I hadn't said since my grandma used to drag me to church every Sunday. So, the very next afternoon she called me. Her voice, shaky, almost like she'd been crying but trying real hard to cover it up. She said, "Meet me, tonight, no excuses." And baby, the way my curiosity is set up, I grabbed my purse, told myself I was just going to hear her out, nothing more. We met at this quiet little wine bar on the east side. Low lights, soft jazz, the kind of place where secrets hang heavy in the air like smoke. She walked in looking flawless, like always, hair laid, lipstick bold. But her eyes? Lord, her eyes told another story. They were tired, broken, like she'd been carrying a cross, way too heavy for one person. She sat down, leaned across that tiny table and whispered, "I know you saw something." My stomach dropped, my hands clenched around that cheap wine glass. I wanted to lie, play dumb. But her tone, sharp, desperate, made it clear. This wasn't the kind of woman you could fool. So I just nodded, slowly. That's when she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. And then the confession came tumbling out. She said her husband, my boss, wasn't the saint he pretended to be. All that talk about philanthropy, charity dinners, business trips for expansion, lies stacked on lies. She said he was knee-deep in corruption, dirty money flowing through offshore accounts, deals made behind closed doors with men whose names you only hear when scandals break on CNN. I blinked, leaned back in my chair and said, "Girl, are you serious right now?" She nodded, her hands shaking as she grabbed mine. "I'm not cheating on him. I'm not the villain in this story. I'm the only one who sees what he really is. And if I don't stop him, he'll drag me down too." My heart racing like a runaway train. Because let us be real, this wasn't some my man won to pick up his phone at night type drama. This was federal, baby. This was headlines. This was dangerous. She told me she had been collecting evidence. Those folders, the accounts, the passports, they were all part of a bigger puzzle. She said she'd been working with people I had no business even knowing about. Whispers of law enforcement, hidden contacts, late-night meetings in parking garages, and then she dropped the bomb. She said, "I can't do this alone anymore. I need you." Me. I nearly spit out that $10 glass of Chardonnay. I ain't no spy, no whistleblower, no Olivia Pope. I'm just a woman trying to keep her 9 to 5 and make rent on time. But she leaned in closer, her grip tight like claws, and hissed, "He's starting to suspect me. And if he finds out, it's not just me he'll come for. It'll be anyone near me, including you." Now let me pause right here. Because in that moment, the whole room spun. Jazz still playing, couples still laughing, but I couldn't hear nothing but the sound of my own pulse. She wasn't just confessing, she was dragging me into her storm. And honey, let me tell you, when I looked into her eyes, I saw a woman who wasn't bluffing. This wasn't about love triangles or petty secrets. This was survival. So I sat there, my mouth dry, my mind screaming to get up and leave, but my body frozen. Because deep down, I already knew the truth. Once you hear a secret like that, you're part of it. Ain't no walking away clean. And right then, with my hands trembling under hers, she whispered the words that sealed it. "You're in this now, whether you like it or not." Girl, let me tell you how deep I got into this mess. Because this is where things went from suspicious to downright dangerous. I thought I was just uncovering some affair, maybe a little scandal to whisper about at brunch. But honey, the wife wasn't playing no simple game of cheating. She was running a whole double life right under her husband's nose. And somehow, I ended up in the middle of it. She called me late one night, her voice shaking like she'd been crying, but her words cold, calculated. She said, "I know you've seen things, I know you've noticed." I didn't even know how to respond. My first instinct was to hang up and pretend none of this was my business. But curiosity, girl, it had me by the throat. So I listened. She told me straight up, those secret meetings I thought were about love. They weren't romantic rendezvous. They were drop-offs, exchanges. She was collecting documents, recordings, names, evidence, girl. She wasn't sneaking off with a man. She was sneaking off with secrets. My stomach dropped. I asked her, "Evidence for what?" And she just paused, like she was weighing how much to trust me. Then she whispered, "Corruption, fraud, money so dirty it could stain you just for touching it." I swear, my hands went cold just holding the phone. From that moment, it was like I had stepped across some invisible line. I couldn't unknow what I knew. I kept replaying the moments in my head. Her clutching that designer bag like her life depended on it. Her eyes scanning the room at every party, like she was expecting someone to pounce. It all made sense now. She was living a double life. and I was the accidental witness. The next day, she insisted we meet again, but not at the fancy cafe this time. She picked this hole-in-the-wall diner off a quiet street, the kind of place where nobody asked questions. She sat across from me with her big sunglasses on even though it was cloudy, tapping her nails on the chipped table. "I can't do this alone," she said. And when she took off those glasses, I could see the fear in her eyes. "He has people everywhere. If I make one wrong move, I'm done. But you, he doesn't suspect you." I almost laughed because, girl, who was I to play spy games? I work, I mind my business, I try to stay out of trouble. But here she was, laying it all out like I was her lifeline. She explained how she'd been building a case against her own husband. She had informants, contacts, even someone feeding her inside information. But she needed someone on the outside, someone invisible in his world, to help her connect the dots. I shook my head. "This is too much. You need the police, or the FBI, or somebody official." She leaned in so close I could smell her perfume, rich and heavy. "Baby, you don't get it. They already own people on the inside. If I go to the wrong person, I'm dead." I froze. That's when I realized this wasn't some messy marriage drama. This was life or death. Still, part of me couldn't walk away. Maybe it was the adrenaline, maybe it was the way she made me feel like I was important, like I had power I never thought I'd touch. She slid an envelope across the table. Inside were photos. Grainy shots of men in suits, briefcases being exchanged, luxury cars pulling into warehouses at midnight. It looked like something out of a movie, but it was real. Too real. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside my window made me jump. I kept thinking, if he finds out I know, what happens to me? But at the same time, I couldn't shake the fire burning in my chest. I was hooked. I wanted to see how deep it went, even if it swallowed me whole. By the end of that week, I was following her lead. Small favors at first, picking up an envelope, making a phone call from my number so it couldn't be traced back to her. Each time I told myself it would be the last, but each time I went deeper, and the more I saw, the more I understood. This wasn't about betrayal of the heart. This was betrayal of the law, betrayal of an entire city. And just when I thought I could keep playing along in the background, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're in this now. If he goes down, so do you, unless we finish what we started." Girl, I swear my soul left my body in that moment. Because I realized she wasn't just using me as a friend or a witness. She was making me her partner in this dangerous game. A game where the stakes weren't just broken hearts. They were lives, reputations, and power so big it could crush us both. And sitting there across from her, I knew one thing for sure. I had crossed a line I could never uncross. Girl, let me tell you something. That night? It's still burning in my mind like a bad dream mixed with a movie scene. You ever walk into a room and feel like everybody already knows something you don't? Like the whole room done been whispering about you, and when you show up, they all pretending like they talking about the weather? Baby, that was me at that dinner. The wife had insisted I come. She was like, "Please, I need you there. It's important." And I thought, important for what? But she begged so sweet, eyes all wide, voice cracking like she was carrying the whole world on her back. So I said yes, even though every bone in my body told me no. The restaurant was one of those fancy spots downtown, dim lights, chandeliers so low you could almost hit your head, and music so soft it made you feel guilty even whispering. Soon as I walked in, I knew I didn't belong there. Folks were dressed like magazine covers, and me? I had on my best dress, but it still felt like I was wearing church clothes to a nightclub. When I sat down, the wife leaned in close and whispered, "Don't say much tonight, just listen." Now, girl, you know I like to talk, but something in her tone made me shut right up. So I sipped my wine and kept my eyes open. Around that table, there were 6 people besides us, businessmen all laughing too loud, drinking too fast, like they ain't got nothing to lose. But their wives, or whatever those women were, looked bored out their minds, stirring drinks, checking nails, not even pretending to smile. That told me enough. The real talk wasn't happening in front of everybody. At one point, one of the men looked straight at me and said, "So, you're the new friend, huh?" The way he said friend made my skin crawl, like he knew something nasty I didn't. I forced a smile, said, "Yeah, just here to enjoy the evening." But he smirked, leaned back, and whispered something to the guy next to him. They both laughed, and I swear it was about me. The wife squeezed my knee under the table, hard, like "Don't you dare react." And that's when I realized this wasn't dinner. This was a test. Halfway through the meal, the mood shifted. One of the women leaned over and said, low enough that only I could hear, "Careful who you walk with, sweetheart. Not every step is about love." She gave me this look, sharp, like she was cutting me open without even raising her voice. Then she smiled at her drink, like she ain't just dropped a bomb in my lap. I froze. I didn't even know this woman, but the way she said it, like she knew I was tangled in something bigger than a messy marriage, like she knew exactly what the wife had pulled me into. Later, while folks were still chattering, I slipped away to the restroom just to breathe. I looked at myself in the mirror trying to calm down, and I swear, I heard two of the men talking right outside the door. One of them said, "She don't look like much, but the wife got her tied on a string." Then the other one laughed. "Strings snap easy. Let's see how long she lasts." Girl, my heart dropped straight to my stomach. That's when I knew I wasn't invisible in this mess. They saw me, they were watching me, and they were waiting for me to slip. When I came back to the table, the wife just stared at me. Didn't smile, didn't blink, just stared like she already knew what I'd overheard. And all I could think was, what game is she playing? Because if this was about betrayal, it wasn't the kind you find between sheets. It was the kind that gets you buried. We left that night with nothing said, but everything understood. And as I walked to my car, heels clicking on the pavement, that woman's words echoed in my head. Not every step is about love. And baby, from that moment on, I knew this story wasn't about romance. It was about survival. Girl, let me tell you something. By the time that week rolled around, I already felt like I was drowning in secrets that weren't even mine. I thought I was done after that dinner where the man with the sharp suit warned me that not everything is about love. But no, that was just the opening act. The real show started when I realized somebody was following me. It was a Tuesday afternoon, sun blazing. I had just left the office. I wasn't at even 3 blocks away when I felt it. The hairs on the back of my neck standing up like my spirit was trying to whisper, "Don't turn around too quick, but baby, you ain't alone." So I slowed down, crossed the street, pretended to check my phone. And there he was, a man with a ball cap pulled low, walking too casual like he wanted me to think it was coincidence. But nah, I ain't stupid. I know when I'm being watched. The first thing that hit me was it my boss? Did he finally notice how close I was to his wife? Or worse, was it somebody his wife sent to make sure I kept my mouth shut? Either way, the panic crawled up my chest, and I swore my heart was drumming loud enough for that man to hear. When I finally shook him off, or at least thought I did, I headed straight to the wife's condo. I busted in that living room, words spilling out before I could even take a breath. "Somebody else following me." And girl, you should have seen her face. She didn't even flinch. She just sipped her wine, leaned back on that velvet couch and said, "Good. That means he's worried. It's working." Working? My jaw damn near hit the floor. She started explaining like it was the most normal thing in the world. She had been planting seeds, dropping hints, making her husband suspicious on purpose. Those little meetings she had, the ones I thought were romantic rendezvous. They weren't. They were with private investigators, bankers, people who knew where the money was buried. Every glance, every message, every late-night call, she told me, It's not about passion. It's about proof. I sat there stunned, feeling like the room was tilting. Proof? She was collecting evidence like a detective in stilettos. She had files, voice memos, photos, account numbers, all tucked away, safe, waiting for the right moment. And guess who she wanted to help guard some of it? Me. I said, now hold on. Don't drag me deeper into this mess. But she was already shoving a manila envelope across the table. It's too late, she whispered, her eyes sharp as glass. You're in it now. If he's watching you, that means he's nervous. And if he's nervous, we're close. Girl, my hands were shaking as I touched that envelope. Inside were copies of wire transfers, names I recognized from the news, offshore accounts that looked straight out of a crime show. It hit me. This wasn't no side affair. This was corruption with a capital C. And me? I was sitting dead center in the middle of it. The worst part? That night when I got home, I checked my front door. Somebody had slipped a folded note underneath. No name, no number, just 6 words scrawled in thick black ink. You don't know who you re with, I swear. I dropped that paper like it burned me. My niece damn near gave out. Was it a warning? A threat? Both? All I knew was, the deeper I got, the more dangerous it felt. And still, something in me couldn't walk away. Not yet. Girl, let me tell you, when I finally saw the whole picture, I knew I wasn't tangled in some cheap little affair. No, baby, I was swimming in something so much darker it made my skin crawl. It started with this dusty folder she slid across the table, all casual, like it was just bills or recipes. But honey, when I opened it, whew, offshore accounts, secret business partners, numbers that didn't belong to nobody paying taxes, right? And tucked inside, Lord have mercy, audio recordings. And I'm not talking about gossip tapes. I mean straight up criminal evidence. His voice clear as day, promising favors, arranging payments, laughing like money was just air. At first I said to myself, nah, maybe I'm tripping, maybe I'm hearing it wrong. But then I pressed play on another file. Girl, he was talking about funneling dirty money through charities. Charities! The same ones he used to stand up in church bragging about, shaking hands like he was a savior. Meanwhile, he was robbing them blind. My hands shaking, my chest tight. And she just sat there, sipping her wine like it was a Sunday brunch. Then she leaned in and whispered, now you see why I can't go to the police. He's got half the city in his pocket. If I try alone, I vanish. That's when it clicked. This wasn't no mistress drama. This was power, greed, straight up crime. And me? I was knee deep before I even realized it. Every day after that, stepping into work felt like walking through fire. He'd look at me across the conference table with those cold eyes, and I swear it was like he was peeling my soul apart, searching for secrets. And girl, the way my stomach dropped when I got that late night text. Don't trust her. Don't trust him. Watch your back. I almost threw my phone across the room. That weekend she called me back over and baby, she put the whole mess on display. Bank statements, fake invoices, photos of him shaking hands with men I wouldn't want to meet in daylight. She'd been building a case for years. But she needed me, my job, my access to lock it down. I wanted to scream, why me? Why not somebody else? But deep down, I already knew. I'd seen too much. And once you peek behind that curtain, ain't no walking away clean. She grabbed my hand, her nails digging in, her eyes wild. If you help me, we can bury him. If you don't. She let it hang there, heavy, like a threat wrapped in a prayer. The next morning at work, his questions cut sharper than knives. You been staying late? Spending a lot of time with my wife, huh? My throat dried up every time. And then that black car followed me home, slow, quiet, like a shadow I couldn't shake. That night I laid in bed, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, and I realized it plain as day. This wasn't about cheating or even revenge. It was about survival. I had evidence that could burn him to the ground, but holding it meant a target on my back. And just before dawn, another message buzzed on my phone. Decide whose side you're on. Time is running out. Girl, that's when I knew. If I opened my mouth, I could destroy one of the most powerful men in the city. But if I stayed silent, I might just destroy myself. Baby, this is where the air got thin and everything started closing in on me. Up until now, it felt like I was watching somebody else's movie, snooping, whispering, clutching folders that weren't mine. But in chapter 10, the camera turned on me, and suddenly I was under a spotlight I didn't ask for. The signs came slow at first. He started with small questions that weren't questions at all. "You've been staying late a lot," he'd say, folding his hands, watching my face. "You and my wife spending time together, huh?" he asked in the hallway once, voice like smooth glass. People heard him and looked away, and I felt exposed like a dish under a lamp. I smiled, played the part, but inside my chest felt like it was caving in. Then the looks began, the kind that cut through you. When he passed by the copier, he'd tilt his head, study me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. It wasn't just him. Men who moved at his command became alert, lingering near the break room, asking casual questions that had sharp edges. I kept wondering, who was he sending? Who did he trust to pry? The wife kept pushing too. Her texts came late, urgent, clipped. "Be ready," she wrote one night. "Tonight." At work she smiled all sunshine, but in private her voice turned to steel. "Don't hesitate. We don't have forever." Her pressure felt like a hand gripping my spine. Pressure from both sides started to crack me. I was the in-between, caught between a man circling like a shark and a woman demanding I be ruthless. I began taking calls in stairwells, slipping out of meetings to pick up envelopes, canceling plans because I couldn't risk someone listening. The ordinary things of my life, lunch with friends, Sunday church, started slipping away because everything felt monitored. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. "We're watching. Walk away." I stared until the words blurred. Walk away. When you're pulled into somebody else's war, there ain't no neat exit. I tried to breathe, but the room felt thin and my palms damp. Then the parking garage incident. Leaving late, fluorescent lights buzzing, a sleek black sedan eased up behind my car. Two men stepped out, calm, expensive shoes, no rush, just watching. They didn't approach, didn't threaten with words. They relied on the weight of their silence. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles white, locked the doors, and drove like I had to get away before the pavement swallowed me. I showed up at her door trembling. She poured wine into Crystal like she always did, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "They're getting restless," she said quietly. "He suspects something. We have to act smarter." She spread a map on the coffee table, names circled, addresses marked, lines drawn, like a strategist planning an operation. She pointed to a spot and said, "We'll hit him here." Hearing the plans felt surreal. I'd gone from assistant to unwilling operative, from background to target. I couldn't call the police. What would I even say? "Hi, sir. My boss is corrupt, and his wife recruited me." The whole thing sounded absurd when spoken aloud. Who would believe me without proof that would get me killed to hold on to? Mistakes started to pile up like dominoes. I left an envelope on my desk by accident. By morning, it was gone. A call I placed from my phone was intercepted and later played back to me in a thin, mocking voice. Each misstep tightened the noose a little more. At work, his questions got sharper. "You've been working late. Why? Why are you always with my wife?" He didn't accuse. He leaned, and the weight of his words accused enough. Once an HR rep asked to see me under the guise of routine check-ins, and I could hear the hint of the boss in the questions. "Who have you been talking to? Where have you been? Why are you carrying bags for Mrs. Carter?" It felt like the world was closing in from all sides. She watched me, gauging every twitch, and sometimes she'd catch my eye and smile, pleased that I'd come this far. Other times she'd press her hand to my arm and hiss, "We don't have time." Those moments were the hardest because they showed me I mattered to her cause, and yet I had no real idea what that would cost me. Then, as I was leaving one night, I saw him waiting by the elevator. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He passed me slowly, and when he reached his car, he said without looking back, "I know more than you think." My knees nearly gave out. That phrase sank into me like cold water. It was the moment I realized we'd reached the edge. He knew someone knew. Whether he knew it was me, I couldn't tell. But after that night, every step felt like walking a narrow beam above a fire. Every breath was a gamble. And honey, the next move wasn't mine. The game had shifted, and whatever came next would decide who survived. Baby, let me tell you, when I say that night changed everything, I mean it. Like my whole world flipped upside down in front of a room full of people. I can still feel my stomach knot up thinking about it. So listen, my boss was hosting this big charity gala, all fancy, black tie, the kind of event where folks are pretending to be saints while cutting dirty deals under the table. Everybody who was anybody was there. The mayor, judges, CEOs, socialites dripping in diamonds that could pay off my student loans twice. And me? I was there only 'cause the wife insisted. She said, "You gotta be there, girl. Tonight is the night." The way she said it gave me chills, like she wasn't talking about a party. She was talking about a war. I walked in, heels clicking, dress borrowed from a cousin, trying to look like I belonged. And immediately I felt eyes on me. My boss gave me that tight smile from across the room, the kind that says, "I see you and I know too much." His wife, though, she looked like fire. Red silk gown, hair pulled back tight, diamonds glowing like they had secrets too. She slid up next to me, whispering, "Stay close. Don't say a word unless I tell you to." Honey, my heart almost jumped out my chest. The whole night I felt like I was watching a play. People laughing too loud, clinking glasses, acting normal while something dangerous hummed under the surface. And then it started. One of the wife's friends, a sharp little woman with eyes like a hawk, took the stage. She tapped the mic, cleared her throat, and said, "Before we celebrate tonight, there's something you all need to hear." Baby, my knees buckled. Because what came next wasn't just gossip, it was war. The screens lit up around the ballroom, and suddenly, recordings started to play. My boss's voice, clear as day, talking about offshore accounts, shell companies, payoffs to politicians, paper trails, receipts, photos of him meeting shadowy men in back rooms. I swear, every jaw in that room dropped. You could have heard a diamond earring hit the floor. And me? I stood frozen, clutching my champagne glass like it was the only thing keeping me upright. My boss's face turned stone cold. He didn't yell, didn't move, just sat there with his hand on the table, knuckles white, while his empire crumbled in front of his friends and enemies. And his wife? She smiled. Lord, that woman smiled like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. But here's the kicker. Right in the middle of the chaos, his eyes found mine. Sharp, heavy, dangerous. Like he knew I had something to do with it. Like he knew I was part of her plan. My blood turned to ice. I wanted to melt into the floor. People started whispering, gasping, phones coming out, recording everything. Reporters were already dialing numbers. The mayor slipped out the back, judges followed, and the whole room turned into a frenzy. It was no longer a party, it was the fall of a king. Then my boss stood up, calm, steady, like a man who still thought he could control the storm. He said, "This is slander, lies, fabricated." But baby, nobody believed him. The evidence was too thick, too raw, too real. And while he talked, his wife walked forward, heels clicking like drum beats, and she said, "No, darling, this is the truth, and it's been a long time coming." The room erupted, shouts, screams, cameras flashing. Security moved in. I backed up, hands shaking, sweat trickling down my spine. I thought, I'm caught. He's gonna know it was me helping her, and I'll be ruined right here with him. But that's when the wife grabbed my hand, pulled me close, like we were sisters in this madness, and whispered, "It's done. You're safe now. We won." Safe? Honey, I didn't feel safe at all. I felt like the ground under me was splitting open. The night ended in chaos. My boss was escorted out, shouting threats under his breath, reporters chasing after him. His wife stood tall, glowing like a queen who finally claimed her throne. And me? I stumbled home, dress wrinkled, heart pounding, head spinning with one thought. I had just watched a man's empire explode, and somehow I was standing in the middle of the wreckage. And here is the real truth. I didn't know if I survived the night or if I just became part of something I could never escape. Listen, if you want the clean, glossy ending where everyone gets their applause and walks off stage, you picked the wrong story. What I got was a life edited and rearranged for headlines, and a morning after that tasted like metal. The gala lit the fuse, but the aftermath was where the real work happened. The testimony, the subpoenas, the slow, grinding undoing of a man built on other people's suffering. In the weeks after the gala, the city buzzed like a hive that had been knocked over. News vans lined the curb. Anchors wanted sound bites. People who used to shake his hand now crossed the street to avoid his shadow. The charities that had been fronts for his schemes were bleeding, their ledgers exposed. I'd held some of those ledgers in my hands, thin stacks of paper that felt heavier than any weight I'd ever carried. And every time I thought about those pages, I heard the echo of voices I'd never want to hear again. Vanessa became a figure people either toasted or wanted to tear apart. To the cameras she was composed, polished statements, steady eyes, and to some she was a hero. To others she was a villain who had used the city's compassion as a stage. But behind the public persona was exhaustion. She told me she'd given up sleeping, that the nights were full of planning and bargaining and fear. She'd engineered a fall, but the knives that carved it out cut her too. It was surreal. This man who walked tall in marble lobbies reduced to a collection of transactions and whispered phone calls. Hearing the recordings again in a formal room felt different than when Vanessa had played them in her living room. There, in the hush of a courtroom, I felt the full weight of what we'd done. And then there was me, strapped to both consequences and conscience. People glanced at me differently. Old friends drew back. New acquaintances closed ranks. I'd go buy groceries and feel the sweep of eyes cataloging me. The woman who had been there, who had helped, who had made choices that were both brave and dangerous. I remember the detective with patient eyes who sat across from me and asked the same questions in different ways. He wanted timelines, access logs, who knew what and when. I told him the truth as far as it could go, what I had seen, what I had carried, the envelopes I'd picked up. But you can't tell a cop everything when the cost of truth is a life. Part of me wanted to shout, to say she used me. But another part, the part that remembered a grandmother's advice about keeping your head down, held back. When you're small in a world of loud men, discretion sometimes feels like survival. She reached into her bag and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a stack of photocopies, more records, more transactions, organized and stamped. Her fingers closed on mine for a beat, and she said softly, "Keep these, for when you need to remember why." I wanted to ask for apologies. Instead, I took the pages and swallowed the anger with a dry laugh. Gratitude was messy, fear was messier. What the cameras didn't show was the collateral. The people who'd scrambled because their paychecks stopped. The intern who lost a gig and couldn't pay rent. The charity that folded and left a small team of volunteers scrambling to help clients who suddenly had nowhere to turn. Justice tastes righteous until you see the real cost. I'd wanted truce, but the ache that came with it surprised me. Isn't that always the case? We think justice will be clean and applicable like a neatly tied ribbon. Instead, it's frayed rope that sometimes snags the innocent. Over time, the headlines faded like any other story. My boss's name became a warning whispered over office cubicles. Vanessa, who had become more myth than person, slipped away from the cameras. Some said she left the country. Others said she started a foundation to aid victims of financial crimes, and I hoped that was true. I never saw her again after that final day, but I kept the envelope she gave me like a relic, a reminder that I'd been pulled into something that changed me. As for me, life attempted to stitch itself back together. I kept working for a while, then found quieter roles. If you ask me now about loyalty, about betrayal, about what it means to be faithful, my answer is not simple. Vanessa didn't cheat because she wanted new arms to hold. She betrayed a system. She weaponized truth. She traded the private ache of her marriage for public reckoning. In doing so, she saved some and harmed others. She did what she had to, and that's its own kind of politics. So here's my final confession, the real one. The wife of my boss never cheated in the way everyone first assumed. She planned. She organized. She sacrificed her peace to make sure a man who profited off others would no longer hide under the guise of philanthropy. And in the quiet after the storm, when the dust settled and the city tried to breathe again, what remained was complicated. Justice and loss braided together, heavy as a stone in your pocket. When I look in the mirror now, I don't always like the woman who stares back, wary, guarded, sharper at the edges. But I know this. What we exposed mattered. It changed a city. It changed me. And when people ask me about fidelity or betrayal, I say it plain. She didn't cheat. She planned it.